In this short video, I will demonstrate how to use a color contrast analyzer tool to identify issues with color contrast in your documents and confirm accessibility. These principles or these guidelines are based on Web Content Accessibility standards, which are applicable in many places around the world to ensure enough color contrast in your materials. I'm going to be using this tool from Deque University. This is a web-based tool. You don't need to download any software in order to use it. You go to the website and you will use the tool on the website to identify color contrast and confirm that color contrast requirements are met in your materials. There are many ways to identify colors. There's the hex number, there's RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue. You can also select the color from a panel, a palette like this, or you can search for the color by name. We will first select the foreground color, so the color of the font, and then the background color. And on the right-hand side of my screen, I have a few different combinations to test for accessibility. We'll start with this one, which has a white font on a gray background. I will use the Eyedropper tool that allows you to select the specific color in your document. So it works as it magnifies or it zooms in into the pixels, and I will select the innermost pixel, which represents the actual color that I selected. And in this case, it's white. And now I will select with the eyedropper the color of my background. There we go. So white font on a gray background, and I have a sample of what it looks like for small text and then for large text. There are different ratios required for small text. They have to be higher for small text and then slightly lower for large text. And in Ontario, based on AODA, we have to follow AA standards. So for this example, it fails. It doesn't meet color contrast requirements for small text, but it does for large text. That's based on AA standards. However, if we want to future-proof our materials and think about future iterations of legislation, and of course, higher contrast, we should also take into consideration AAA standards, which fails in both cases. Let's try another example. We can try this one, option B, which is white font on a dark blue background. And in this case, I will instead use the list of colors. So I will select white for my foreground color or my font color. And then for the background color, it's a darker blue. Not necessarily this one over here, dark blue, but I know there's a one called medium blue. So let's take a look. Okay, so according to this combination, white on a medium blue background, it passes for both AA for small and large text and for AAA as well. But again, if you want to be more specific and more accurate, you would use the color, the eyedropper, and I can do that instead and select the tool. And there we go. It's actually a little darker, so it has a higher contrast ratio. Let's try now with option C. It's a black font on a dark green background. Again, I will select my eyedropper tool and zoom in on the pixels on the letters. So that's black. And then for my background color, I will do the same thing, select green. Okay, and in this case, it passes for large text, but not for small text, right? Because it has a contrast ratio of 3.85 to 1, which is lower than the threshold required for digital accessibility. And let's try the last combination, which is a black background and red font. Okay, so I'll use my eyedropper tool again and zoom into the font, select the pixel, and then go with black for the background. And in this case, it also fails for small text and it passes for large text. There is another tool called the Color Contrast Analyzer by the Paciello Group. This is a tool that you need to download on your computer. This is what it looks like. And it works the same way. You select the Eyedropper tool, and it will tell you whether the combination meets accessibility requirements. So in this case, just like it was identified with this tool, it fails for regular text, it passes for large text. So the higher the contrast, the better it is for everyone. Color contrast ensures that we don't have to focus on deciphering text and straining our eye to focus, but instead we can focus on the content, on the experience, and on the learning. In the course, in one of the quizzes, you'll be asked to use one of these tools to identify color contrast ratios in different combinations. And hopefully this is something that can be helpful for you as you create accessible documents and ensure accessibility for your students and for the people that you work with. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.